can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Paul Jarrett of Bulu. Paul, before I formally introduce you, you need no introduction. I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. And since we're going to go deep in logistics, e-commerce. I'll talk about, what's that?
Boring.
I think you can make any topic not boring. So
thank you.
Check out the previous episode I actually did with Paul. We went deep on certain topics. We're going to go deeper in the e-commerce world. You know, it's only boring if you're not in the industry, right? Because if someone's in the industry, it's not boring, right? It's the non-sexy stuff that makes businesses run smoothly, right? Because without logistics, nothing gets to a customer. So that would be a problem.
Yep.
So some of the past episodes, Sam Moses, Socrates, they do custom socks from Italy, from different companies. Actually, they work with a lot of B2B companies. So like Netflix, they want to get for all their staff, or if they want to give them to clients. That was a super interesting episode. He started with a men's shop in Toronto, and it grew into an e-commerce business. And Bold Commerce, co-founder Jason Myers. I was just reading, I think they're installed in over 700,000 merchants' sites. They're Shopify apps, and they have a variety of Shopify apps. So you can check them out, boldcommerce.com, and the episode I did with Jason. And just really interesting founder stories like Quest Nutrition I had on, and RX Bars I had on. Super interesting stories, and that and many more on inspiredinsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25, and at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships. How do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. Kind of like what Paul does in logistics. We're like the magic elves that run around in the background to make it look easy for the host so they can develop amazing content and actually create amazing relationships, and most importantly, run their business. That's kind of what Paul does for e-commerce companies. You know, you send the product, they do everything else, getting to the customer. But for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, yes, Paul, go ahead.
I got to plug you because I'm like, you're not giving yourself enough credit. So stop the podcast. No, I'm kidding. Doc, all right. If you are listening right now, here's the deal. I get 1 million podcast people emailing me daily. When I decided to kind of jump back on and things, some positive things happen, Dr. Jeremy Wise and Rise 25 was exactly where I went. And I honestly, like, our relationship goes back so long, I was a little bit concerned, like maybe they won't. And let me tell you, the organization and the straightforward and the get it done. I talked to plenty other places, and I think we talked and I probably signed the next day or something like that. So this is my plug. Stop talking to everybody else. Talk to him. And everything that you hear about relationships and all that, it is beyond true. So that's my plug for Rise 25. Rise 25. Rise up together. There you go.
I appreciate it. You're going to come on all my future interviews, and I'm just going to put you in.
I don't BS either. I don't bullshit either. So that's it's well deserved. It's well deserved.
I appreciate it. So if you have questions, go to rise25.com. Happy to answer them. And
Paul,
I'm excited to introduce, or Paul, I'm excited to introduce Paul. And Paul Jarrett's co-founder and CEO of Bulu. As you can see, if you're watching, there is the video version. If you're listening to the audio only, you can see their warehouse behind them and the cool hat as well. And Paul actually grew up, and we go more into his backstory in the other episode, in a Nebraska trailer park.
Yeah.
And he has background in collegiate football and MMA. And Bulu has gone through many iterations. Actually, they had a software company that they sold that powered subscription companies. They also helped create private label subscription boxes for big brands like Disney, Clorox, GNC. I think you guys sold a brand to GNC at one point, to providing actually an e-commerce solution business to ship for companies to get more exposure to more customers in addition to shipping out their stuff. And so we'll talk about how that works. It's called Tricky Ship, and we're going to talk about kind of the ins and outs of that. But they went from packing boxes in a studio apartment to occupying 100,000 square foot warehouse and growing. And you can check them out. Their website's bulugroup.com. Paul, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. That stressed me out when it is 100,000. There's a lot of people here. Who's in charge over here behind me?
Let's talk about, we'll maybe go, we talked about your backstory last time. So I wanted to just talk about what Bulu's up to now and Tricky Ship.
Yeah. So we, thanks for all that information and kind of setting the table, man. I appreciate that, because we have gone through like an incredible amount of iterations, right? The irony is we are now doing basically the first biggest problem that we encountered when we first had Bulu Box. So, I always kind of joke around and tell people like, hey, we did consumer packaged goods and we did well. And, there was a problem that we solved with software, right? And then we provided a service to big brands. And so, those are so shockingly different categories of business, right? Goods and services and everything in between, right? But what we're doing now is it's truly the thing where like I feel it, like I physically feel it. It like, sparks my fire, whatever you want to call it. But like the reason for that is we are helping out or supporting, or we use the word empowering, people like Stephanie, who is my co-founder and now the owner of Bulu. We're helping them do all of the things that we wish that we would have done. And how do we do that? Like we have over a decade of working with the biggest brands in the world, building software, all that stuff. And truth be told, we kind of looked behind us one day and we went like, man, we have this giant warehouse. What do we actually want to do? Like, do we want to move forward with this? Do we want to start something new? Like, what really like lights both Paul and Stephanie up and our main team? And it was a pretty easy answer to that. We kind of looked around the table and we're like, man, our core value is like the 5-way win, right? It's for our clients, customers, community, co-founders, co-owners, anything with a C, right? But the idea of really what our like core DNA is that make up most of the people at the top of the company, I would say, maybe everyone, is that we really love to, we have this like rising tide raises all boats, right? And we just know that if we do great work in an industry that's kind of intimidating and it's kind of aggressive and there's old school methodologies in it, but if we can be the people that don't just say like, oh, we got cheap shipping rates, right? But we can be the people that listen and go like, hey, I know when we experienced that, here's what we did, right? And we got team members that have, our average tenure, I think, is like 8.5 years. And so what we do now is it doesn't matter how big your brand is, doesn't matter how many you're shipping. Most companies, even the big brands, they think about logistics of simply getting things from point A to point B, right? Like just visualize a train track, right? We have learned what's called hybrid hub and spoke logistics. And how did we learn it? Honestly, we didn't know any better. We grew up doing the most difficult shipping because nobody told us any different, right? So, Disney says, ship to our theme parks, ship to our stores, ship to our customers. GNC, same thing, right? 5,000 stores globally, like all these kits, bundles, all this stuff. And because we had the backing of those brands and because we had the time and the money and the ability to build really cool things, we just turned around one day and went, what's holding us back from offering this hybrid hub and spoke logistics, AKA the tricky ship to everybody? And the answer was nothing. So we said, screw it. Let's work with who we want to work with. Let's work with growth-minded people. And why do we want to do that? Because if they work with us and get into our system, our combination of software and the physical warehouse, what we're able to do really, and why most people come to us, is they can sell anywhere they want with any quantity that want, which doesn't sound like a big deal. But if you're in the consumer packaged goods industry, you run into these challenges where people say, hey, send this pallet to the store, or send this, or meet these requirements, EDI. There's a huge laundry list. And at Bulu, we just say, hey, that independent retail store, we can ship to them and they can order 1 or 2 products, not a case. That church, that school, same thing. Directly to customers, same thing. Why? When you have a hybrid hub and spoke model and you truly, truly appreciate and understand how important both the physical and the digital version of that product is, and you connect those two things, you can kind of ship anywhere, right? Logistics to me, and I would argue this kind of with anybody, it's nothing more than ensuring that the data is attached to the physical product through software. And if you can do that, then anybody can do what we're doing. It's just really complicated. It's really tricky, right? But yeah, that idea of unlimited sales channels, TikTok, sure, right? Target, sure. Unlimited sales channels, packaging and packing options without a huge fee. We just charge a flat like 10% for storing, packing, shipping. I didn't realize what a big deal it would be, really. So we're trying to say that like in a quicker way, but we have like 30 new clients in the past 60 days. So it's fun to experience the wave, and also having experienced it before, like to actually appreciate it this time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whenever you get those big waves, we've done the double, triple millions of dollars in revenue, and your hair is just on fire, right? I have no hair anymore because of that, right? And this go around, it's like, yeah, we go hard, but like we can stop and be like, Marcus, like, good job, man. Like, and it's fine. That can wait another day. What's important and not important. So it's just so much fun right now, right? It's a great atmosphere.
I want to talk about doing things differently. And I feel like one of the things you help people do, you level the playing field a little bit and help
Absolutely
entrepreneurs compete with major players. So talk about how that works and how you help them.
Yeah. It's so easy, especially in I'll just say blue collar, right? Blue collar industry like logistics and fulfillment, to just kind of take what people say as truth, or as almost like biblical, right? Like, oh, you're not EDI compliant, like da 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 da, like sorry, you can't ship in the store. Like, what does that really mean? Like, if you really break down what so many industry terms mean and so many things in this industry, like what people, I should start with what people are actually saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I have zero patience for that, because that to me is like, you're just waiting for the competition to get you, right? So that's, I think, the number one thing. And understandably, because most people, if you mess up in logistics, you just get fired, right? Whether that's on the floor or that's having a client, right? So that is kind of I tell people, if having been born in a trailer park and having had a lot of these jobs, and then living in New York and working in advertising, San Francisco, and tech, and everything in between, most people, I think, forget or don't have an appreciation for, at this level, which people say bottom of the totem pole, I say the foundational level, people are working not to get fired. Like, everybody wonders like how I can communicate with kind of like the white collar and the blue collar and like ebb and flow in between. I'm like, oh, it's to me, it's simple. You need to understand like the mentality of people that are like, they're just trying not to get fired. And then other people, usually behind the desk, are trying to figure out ways to grow, right? And when you can kind of sort that out, it makes it very easy. And what I say that we do is, when we look at all of this intimidating attitude, by the way, EDI compliance is nothing more than a set of rules provided by a retail company. And again, I'll argue with anybody on that, right? Like, When you go to fill out and sell on Shopify or Amazon, you click OK and the little red star pops up. That's basically you're not EDI compliant, right? And when it doesn't, then it's really not that difficult. But for years, it was even a mystery to me. But so leveling the playing field to us is like, we are looking at what the biggest brands in the world are doing and what the most novel brands in the world are doing. And we say, like, why can't we do that, right? And we pick up the phone and we call UPS, FedEx, DHL, you name it. And we say, no, we want to do it like this because of this. And you can't do it. No, that's not good enough. Who's your boss? Who do we talk to, right? And we're just relentless in that fact because we view it as we are fighting for the entrepreneurs and the growth-minded people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into a product. And like, I'll be damned if we don't go to war to let them have the same opportunity as everybody else. And that's just like our attitude from top down, right? We're getting certified to be a women-owned business. So I'm just that, there's probably a big chip on my shoulder growing up in a trailer park and kind of having the, there's I shouldn't complain, like white dude in Nebraska, tall. I hit the genetic lottery, right? Let's get that straight. Right? However, what I will say is seeing the advantages that other people get, whether it's work life or whatever, like I'm just not okay with that. And like, how do you make it even? You have to fight like hell. And we enjoy doing that for our partners.
Talk about
I was like getting like fired up about that, man. The D lineman in me is coming out. We're not afraid to rip off a quarterback's head over here.
Exactly. Don't get in my way.
Yeah.
We'll talk through an example. And I know long table pancakes. Talk about them for a second.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. So Long Table Pancakes, phenomenal company, Sam and his team. They're on Shark Tank. I think they have I think actually they're going to be airing like tomorrow or very soon. And so re-airing on Shark Tank. I think it's a catch up. So I saw our team scrambling to get ready for that. But
you're going to get hit hard.
Yeah, it's always fun, right? I actually stopped at the manufacturer today. Well, let me tell kind of the story really quick. So a friend of a friend connected Long Table with us, and we always kind of get a lot of hot leads because something is broken. It's an inventory or some problem, and people are like, I don't know what you do, friend, but go talk to Bulu. Like if they can't fix it, like they're going to point you in the right direction, which is pretty much our sales strategy, right? They came to us and we looked at everything, and long story short, we said, hey, there's actually a co-packer, aka manufacturer, a company right next door to us that does flour-based mixes, right? They can make the pancakes. So let's talk to them on your behalf if you guys are cool with it, see what they can do it for, and boom. I mean, it's like literally 50 feet away. I was over there this morning making sure they were okay with production, right? I couldn't help myself. It seems like, don't go over there. I'm like, I have to. I got to get eyes on it. And so we sent them over there, and Susan and Mark Zink, also married couple in Nebraska, weird. They said, yeah, like we can do it this much, and the margin is really hard. Actually, if you'll notice on the website, they sell it in packs of 2. So that's another thing that we said, okay, we're saving you some money on manufacturing. Let's look at your product. And having the e-commerce background, we said, hey, you're just in this weird category right now where you're gonna be able to hit a lot, reasonable margin and create better product if you just sell 2 of these at a time. You can thank UPS and FedEx for that, right? But that's like
so like here's like 3 different different flavors. You could get 3 or 4 or 2. Yep. It all looks delicious. I'm getting hungry.
They're incredible. I mean, if people really understood what Sam is doing with the sustainable farming and their ingredients. I mean, everything is done as correct as you could ever want it. And so, just that little recommendation of, hey, why not try selling 2? I mean, if you would have saw this website,
you're like, we just doubled your revenue. You're welcome.
Yeah. I mean, like if you would have saw it before, it was like 1 pancake, whatever. But for us to be like, no, let's do mixes, different versions. And it's like, oh, that's too expensive. We're like, it doesn't matter. We have to do that. Like we have to be able to get customers. So, you got the manufacturing, you have kind of the e-commerce help and support the logistics. And so net it ended up turning their profit margins to a number where now it's just going to be easier for them to get into retail, right? And so it's like learning all of those things over the past decade and seeing how passionate Sam and their team are about the product. It really makes it easy to go to bat and go, you know what, I'm just going to go walk over next door, pound on the door, and beg, fight, bargain, whatever I got to do with Susan to get this at a price that makes sense. And this is like the most fun thing in the world, is to not just save somebody a couple bucks on shipping, but to actually get down in the weeds. And now they can ship to anybody, right? They can sell those variety packs in a local corner store if they wanted to. And that's just unheard of. So yeah, it's all about leveling the playing field, right?
Paul, a couple takeaways for me on that. One, relationships, right? Because not only do you bring your expertise to help them for logistic purposes, but like
Right.
you bring in your decades of experience with other partners and people that can actually help the business from that standpoint, also from the strategic standpoint of making recommendations. And on the Bulu front, I could see how you help level the playing field there, because you
Yeah.
help remove limitations for them, maybe limitations from other people that they have to ship a pallet of this one, or they can only ship one at a time, where you can help basically mix and match and do other things that would help them, improve their average order volume and other things.
Yeah. I always feel like, some of the main advice I give people is like, don't worry, everybody is just figuring it out. And I've been in the room with Disney and saw 100 data scientists do their homework, but 18 months to launch a product. And you know what happened with them? They weren't even close to the target customer that purchased the product. And it was like, I was like, anybody else, I would have been like, oh man, what are we gonna do now? But I was like, oh cool, like even Disney like fights with it. And the product was really interesting because it was a princess. Every month you get a new princess dress, right? And it was like mothers, they did all the persona, all that stuff. They blasted out. You want to guess who was the main purchaser of it?
I mean, by the way you're saying it, I want to say dads, but I'm probably way off.
Close.
Okay.
Grandpa. And grandpa couldn't buy one for his, niece or nephew or whatever. He had to buy a year. And then grandpa would feel bad for the sister or maybe brother, who knows? And he would buy another one. And then grandpa would feel bad about all the other kids in the family. And so, the first thing we see is these like tickets coming through like $2,500. And we're like, what is happening? We, even Disney, like we thought it was broke. But my point of that is like, you can have all of the information at your fingertips for the biggest company in the world. But when the rubber hits the road and that gets in people's hands, things are going to change. And that's cool to be able to just bring a little bit of that to like, founders. And I see so many founders that have consumer packaged goods are shipping anything. They actually, it's almost like hardwired where they have this like, well, someday when I ship more, and they don't realize that someday already arrived. You get these people shipping 50,000 a month and you're like, that's phenomenal. And they're like, well, when we get to 100, and I'm like, no. When you got to 5,000, when you got to 10,000, when you got to 25 and now 50, like all of those times, somebody should have been fighting to get you better discounts. And just like, we're very careful about the brands and what we share amongst each other, but there is nothing better than connecting a former retail buyer with a new up and coming brand. And just like, because it kind of happened under the Bulu umbrella, everybody is like cool with it,
I want to talk about the real brains behind the operation. All right, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And talk about running a business with your wife.
Yeah. So neither one of us would have it any other way. And that's no bullshit. I would say that, I get a little emotional thinking about it. We this is going to be cheesy. I remember the moment that I saw Stephanie Turman, right? And I remember I can remember what she's wearing. You always hear the stories of like love at first sight. I was like stalker at first sight, right? And,
It's only
I went,
stalker if the other person doesn't want you.
yeah,
If she didn't want you, then it'd be stalker.
nope, she didn't for 2 years. Nope,
Oh,
definitely
gotcha.
didn't. Yeah,
So it
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
stalker.
Yeah, well, she came from a football family, national championship brother, quarterback, all, just amazing accolades. And, here I am, this football player just doing a class for check a box on something, or advertising club, because it didn't have math and it checked a box, right? And boy, I joined that project and, I tried to get in their group. And really, we've been working ever since that time. So we're probably 21. It's probably been 20 years. We've always been doing stuff together. And the reason is we've never found anybody else that can kind of like keep that speed or that strategic mind and think, well, what if? And I say to people, I'm the person that throws all of the puzzle pieces out. And I'm like, here's where we're at. I know how we can get there, but like, I'm going to break my brain trying to figure out how we actually get there, the path. And she's just phenomenal at organizing that, right? And when we decided to start working together, we had already worked together at ad agencies, multiple ones. She had been the client, I was the service company, vice versa. And then we just kind of said like, man, we average 60, 80 hours a week everywhere from New York to San Francisco. Like, why don't we stop making everybody else, we're giving our souls to everything we work on. So why don't we just do something? And, I started and, she kind of saw me struggling, I think, and was like, walks in one day and she's like, guess what? I'm like, what? She's like, I quit my job. And I was like, what? And she's like, I was like, no, I think I go, that's great. Right. I had no idea she was going to do it. And she's like, yep. She's like, so I got my 2 weeks. They're good with it. We got enough money for 3 months. Give this thing a shot. Like, let's go. And I'll tell you what, we worked like mad people, like crazy. And it was 67 days later and we had 1.5 million in funding. And everybody's like, how did you do it? I'm like, we didn't. There was 34 of those days we did not sleep. It was just, sticky notes, nap on the floor, sticky notes, nap on the floor. And everything was probably too good when we started the company because we definitely really broke apart, right? Like I tended to go the sales, marketing, relationships route, and she went like probably clean up Paul's mess route. Right. But what did happen is we actually learned how to not work together. Right. Which sounds silly, but like we didn't have each other as a crutch. And she had to figure out, a lot of stuff and probably fix finances and everything else that I had done. And I would say that after the first 3 years of Bulu, I mean, we went from, I could kind of point and grunt at a screen and she'd be like, oh, I get what you're saying, to like, like just, wait, what are you doing? Like, why did you say that? Like, and then the pandemic hit and, I think everybody had, people coming, going remote, like it was just pure chaos. And so I think those years of kind of drifting apart a little bit, like it really got dicey, like, and I'll just say it, on all fronts. And we're open about it because we think people need to know that. I will say the one thing that we do have is, even if it lasts like a year or 6 months, we're like, I love you. I love you. Let's wake up, try again tomorrow. And there's those times where like, how many times are we going to do this? But the reality is we knew that this was good for us. We knew that if you can experience any level of pain, no matter how hard it is as an individual or together, there's usually a bounce back the other way that's twice as good. Right. And it's so hard. Everybody can talk about that as much as they want, but when you're in it and it's bad, it is terrible, And so it did get that bad. And it did, you talk money, investor, everything. So it's almost like we had a really good run and then all the karma was saved up and hit us. And through the pandemic, we pushed and pushed and pushed. And we got the opportunity to buy our company 100%. And it was Stephanie Jarrett that got the ball over the finish line. Like I might have drove it 99 yards, but I have no problem telling anybody the biggest deal in my life I couldn't close it. You know what I mean? And that's like humbling because like I'm not that dude. But like this situation, like it got me. You know what I mean? I mean, even I think when I was doing your podcast, like but underneath the surface, like I was in a bad place. I think that's around that time. I was probably just disassociated with what we were doing at the time, right? And that's okay, right? Because that's true. That's reality. That's what it's like to be an entrepreneur. But I will tell you, man, what she learned and what I learned through the last, during the pandemic, I'll say, right? It has made that first couple of years that we thought was like kind of rocket fuel. Like now it's like absolute, just electric rocket, you name it. And we've never had more fun, and we're just so aligned on everything because we've seen every version of the world. And it was even to decide to buy the company, like we're like, man, we don't know. And so we actually kind of, I would say, got the company and we were still like, oof, is this going to be all right? And once that monkey was off our backs and we could honestly like look at clients and go, we're going to be here. We got your back. Like it just, everything changed. So it's the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. And I think the main important thing is you got to be really aware of what your kids are watching. And that's one thing I'm really grateful for is like, they pick up on those tones, they pick up on that stuff. But what I have seen with like our little 4 and 7-year-old boys is their ability to like talk through difficult things is a direct outcome of our challenges, right? So it's not for everybody, but if you are both tough as nails and have thick skin and just like, this is really cheesy, but like really believe in love, like it'll be a good thing. You know what I'm saying? But like, oof, it can get tough. It can get tough.
And when we say the tough, I'm just going to clarify. No,
yeah,
we're talking about transition. One of the big things was transition from VC to independent.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
What was
That
learning from that looking back, because that seemed to have lifted a lot of weight off of your shoulders, so you can kind of move forward in the direction you wanted to move in.
Yeah. I would say that we were kind of looking at a decade of putting our souls into something, and we just didn't know what the outcome was. And we just wanted the outcome to be correct for all parties involved. And I think sometimes people have different ideas of what that looks like, And I would say the thing that I learned, which for somebody like me, yeah, it's really hard, but like to actually not do anything about it and to sit back and trust other people. And, that's hard. And I think that's probably hard for a lot of entrepreneurs of like, sometimes the best plan is no plan, or sometimes you just need to like be quiet and like step back and let things evolve. I would say that the other thing, and this includes myself, because I'm not super proud of my attitude through the whole thing. I don't think anybody involved would be super proud, because it was a challenge. It was a hard thing to figure out. But man, that ego, on all sides, including myself, like that ego, I think in the business world drives so much more than anybody talks about or gives it credit for. And nobody wants to be embarrassed, and nobody wants to, look like a fool or whatever. And, I would say that was probably a big reason why I'm like, I got to step out of this conversation. Like I'm not positively contributing. I can see my own face and how I am. And I'm so frustrated that Stephanie, here's the ball. Like you are, grace under fire. And it was hard for her, but she's pretty magical in, working with people. And I think that's what, our clients will look at me. I always say like, I'm the flamingo, but she's a zookeeper. And so like, they'll listen to me, I'm good for a podcast or whatever, but like, I understand that what she brings to the table, and, I can get in front of Disney or whatever it is, or a brand, but to lay it out and to truly have that trust. And because we are babysitting people's babies in a way with the consumer packaged goods, she's the reason that people stay around. So boy, I hope she listens to this, because I don't think I've ever ranted this much about her. So she was going to join. I really tried to get her to join, but she's actually working on a crazy big deal right now. So
we won't take her away from that. What you're saying, it kind of reminds me of, football in a sense, even, sometimes it's hard probably for entrepreneurs. We just want to move forward. Right.
Yes.
And then I was watching one of the football, playoff games the other day, and I noticed, I forgot who it was, but they didn't go forward. They kind of just were pausing and letting all the blockers go in front of them. And they knew something would open up if they just waited. But an inexperienced like myself, I was in the situation, I was just gone. But you could see they waited and then waited for the opening. So it was very similar. But
I'm having flashbacks of trying to tackle Eric Crouch, who is a Heisman winner, and the play would develop so much you swear he was gone, and you're kind of like looking around, and he just pops out and runs 75 yards. Like, how did he do what? And it was timing and angle, like football, timing and angles. That's what it is.
I want to talk about biooptimizers a bit and what happened with that.
Yeah, that was we have onboarded quite a few clients and kind of, said, we used to do subscription box, and we still do a ton of subscription boxes, but, the reality is that subscription boxes and all of that taught us logistics at a level that most people don't have. And we get a phone call, another friend of a friend, and I'm not sure if Matt and those guys, what had happened, but a few things had just picked up for Wade and Matt. And we got a call from a gal, or a person named Tammy. And they all just have incredible backgrounds, incredible company, incredible product. And they've been around for a long time, but it was almost like the Google gods maybe, or, something clicked and their sales have just gone through the roof. And they had went through a few different fulfillment companies, AKA 3PLs, third-party logistic companies. And, you can kind of pick up on the phone when people are scrambling, because you can get in a position where you're selling, but you're not actually delivering. And that is a scary place to be, right? Because people don't know where the inventory is or whatever. So they contacted us, and we went through our process, which is very quick and direct, and we try to make it as painless as possible. And then they leave to the airport, and we get a call, and they go, "Hey, we're choosing you. We're not even going to go see the other places. Here's what's really going on. We're selling a ton right now. And yes, we're delivering some, but we're a little concerned. We're going to come back right now and sign the contract. And how do you guys feel about us in the next 3 days getting all of our, millions of inventory and putting it in your warehouse and, yada, yada, yada. And because we had just clicked so well with them, and because of our experience, and we really know like the vitamin supplement, healthy snack space for,
you
shipping.
worked with GNC.
GNC, Vitamin Shop. I mean, the list goes on, right? Like my previous background was in the industry. So, there's just really deep, long contacts, right? So yeah, they came back, and people just kept flying in, and before I know it, I'm looking out on the warehouse floor, and we got our team, and we got literally like VPs from like buy optimizers. People are just moving stuff, and it was like anybody with a set of hands. We got all their stuff in, all their stuff on board, and to do it in a couple of days, like, it's not believable if you're a fulfillment company or a brand. Like, if you hear this story, you're like, BS, but like, that is what exactly happened. And the cool thing is, unrequested or whatever, like, their team has been posting awesome things about us on LinkedIn and social media. And they're using this kind of tricky ship model to capitalize on everything that's picked up for them. And now they can go, if you look at their LinkedIn posts, it's like, got into Apple Nutrition, which nobody's heard of, but like every hour on the hour, they're just adding all these small independent retailers. And we're able to deliver, one mass enzyme, one probiotic, to all these small retailers because they're already have a plan to dominate on, big retailers and whatever. But it's super wise of them to kind of run the tricky ship, if you will, right? And to go attack and get all the other companies. I think it's just like, it's such a good plan. And I just love it because it happened so fast. It was so crazy. And, for anybody in logistics to go, that all happened and we're at 8 months, 9 months, and we've had 2 errors like that. That's just not even believable. So it's a really cool story and the team's amazing. And we just kept them on track and now they're in like hyper growth. So because they share a lot on social media, we're pretty open about it. But yeah, couldn't be happier. I mean, it's like a big client. We're telling the world, yeah, they're ours. So I'm sure they have 1 million sales reps calling them. But that's all good. Like, keep us honest,
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you. Thanks for sharing the journey, this story. I have one last question before I ask it. I just want to point people to check out Bulu, and you can go to bulugroup.com to learn more about what they're working on. My last question is just on resources, some of your favorite resources. It could be some of your favorite books. It could be mentors. It could be colleagues in the industry. Some of your favorite resources we should mention.
Man, I think number one, utilize your network. I just can't really tell relationships network, especially as time. What was Mark Zuckerberg's biggest regret was not developing relationships early on in Facebook. That's pretty wild, sobering to hear. I will say that, I've been really deep into Chat GPT, and that's just kind of like, and I'm not like doing deep code, et cetera. Like, I'm watching 100 YouTube videos, tinkering, and blown away. And I just think if everybody should put a Chat GPT icon next to Google and just try to force themselves to use it. And then actually, like, pretty obscure, but I always find myself using it. I don't know if you're familiar with G2.com. It's like a comparison software website. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever, but you're always trying to find the best software at the right price. And like, man, they have a little grid, like XY axis, where they show competitors and whatever. And man, I haven't had bad luck utilizing G2 to figure out what we should and shouldn't use. So those are just off the top of my head, probably what I've been using the most recently.
Amazing. Paul, thank you. Check out bulugroup.com and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, Paul.
Later, man. Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.